All right, guys. So I've got the 101 in the league, but I'm not sure that it's the right roster to actually take Bijan. Not sure the roster construction's right, if I have the amount of assets I need. Let's talk about who should be drafting Bijan at 101 and who's not a good fit for it.
So this might be a little bit of a hot take, but probably 2/3 of teams should not be taking Bijan Robinson 101. A lot of people probably just went, what? How are you going to take another player? The idea isn't you're going to take another player. It's that you're going to use that pick and try to do other things with it before you're forced to take Bijan 101. Worst case scenario, you don't have a roster that's set up to draft a running back that you're expecting to produce right away on a team that isn't expected to win right away. And we've seen with prior running backs, they have great value until they don't. And so he's a blue chip asset. He's going to go 101 in pretty much every format, except for a really, really niche league where 16 team, 2 QB, something like that. But we're not talking about that. The large masses are probably not playing in those types of leagues. But what teams wouldn't want to take Bijan? And the reason I say 2/3 is because I think there's other moves to make. So you have a lot of teams out there that probably earned the 101 and they lack quarterbacks. They might not even have one quarterback. Not one quarterback we could say is a top 15 dynasty quarterback. So that team needs to be at least shopping that 101 and trying to build the quarterback foundation. If you only have one quarterback, same thing. If your first quarterback is Lamar Jackson and that's all you have, that's a team that should be trying to get an elite quarterback with the 101, not straight up, but at least put it in a deal and see what the prices are on the top 9 or so quarterbacks in your league. And that's the majority of teams. I don't know how many times Shane and I have talked about on roster reviews. Even if you have a team set up to take Bijan, there's also the potential of taking a 2-for-1 package. Can I get a top 8 receiver plus a 24 first? That deal we would entertain. Can you get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson straight up? That deal you would entertain. Can you get one of these high leverage running back trades? Can you get Breece Hall in a 24 first? Something like that. At least you consider those, especially if your team is not just ready to add a running back and ready to go. I think a lot of the teams that I've seen with the 101, they're nowhere close to being optimal and ready to add a running back. Honestly, the best teams that could take the 101 would be the ones that take the 101 in a startup draft. And they're already building around, hey, I'm taking Bijan there. That's going to be my anchor running back. I'm building a roster around him. Right. I don't think we would do that. We'd probably go, I'm not drafting Bijan at the 110. I'll take Justin Fields or something like that instead. But I could see where you would do it, and at least you have a roster to build around. But that's kind of my approach right now is my 101s. I only have a couple, but I don't want to even lock in Bijan yet. There's other moves I want to make, and I think that's the majority of rosters that are holding that 101 right now.
By the way, if you're liking this content, if you wouldn't mind looking down, hit that little thumbs up, give us a like. Easiest way to help out our channel. We appreciate that. Shane, what are your thoughts, man?
My thoughts are I think we should talk about some one quarterback league since a lot of our listeners play in those. One quarterback start 8 or 9. I literally just about any circumstance would be taking Bijan. Your team has to be really, 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 really bad for me to go, no, don't even bother. I was just looking at the historical running back ones over the last 4 years. Okay. 22 points. And then the Christian McCaffrey years. Those were the days, 30 points and 29 points, right?
Oh, baby.
So you add that to a start 9. And I'm just assuming he's a running back 1, just right off the bat. But in a start 9, 1 QB, I could see taking him literally. As long as you have 3 other good players, do it. In a super flex, I kind of don't want to draft them at all, ever. I have the 101 in a few different leagues. Some I earned, some I traded for. And even in the ones I earned, it was years where I punted. So I did something like Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson. So I knew this year it wasn't going to be great as is. But I have wide receivers that are fine. And Deshaun Watson seemingly will play all next year, I would assume. And you add Bijan to that, and it could suddenly be a very much better roster. But I still don't want to make that pick. I still want to split it. I mean, everywhere, again, we can want to trade him for 1 player or 2 players only, Jefferson or Chase. And if you check your inbox, Clay, you have an offer. You get the 101, take it. So in most cases in Superflex, even if I'm competing, I don't know that I want to take him unless I'm just stacked. If I've got 2 top 10 quarterbacks and I've got 2 top 15 wide receivers, let's make that 3 top 15 wide receivers. Yeah, you know what? Let's do the luxury route.
So if you have the 101 and let's say you are in a super flex and you want to take a quarterback, or at least you want to have the option to take a quarterback, are you suggesting move back to like 103, 104 at the latest? Let's say it's 104. Would you give up the 101 if you're getting the 104 and a 24 first?
I don't want anyone watching this to know that. The 103 is kind of as far as I want to fall back to, knowing I need a quarterback. But, we live in the real world. If these are the only offers I have out there, and at some point I'm going to have to make the pick or trade the pick, I'll take it. And then I'll have to hope against hope that Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is at 104, and I'm not drafting Will Levis and then punching myself in the groin later out of anger.
This is the conundrum, too, because I think if there's teams in your league, I don't have a lot of 101s. But there's a lot of teams that have the 101, and they should be going through this exercise. They should be going, do I have the team that's ready to draft Bijan? When in reality, most of the leagues you click on and you see the roster with the 101, you're like, yeah, it's a disaster if they just draft a running back. Like they need to do their due diligence. Now, there are going to be situations, like Shane said, where the best offer you can get or the best offer you are getting before you have to make that pick is not good enough for you to take it. Then you take a little bit of risk. You draft the running back. You hope that running back asset appreciates like Breece Hall did last year until he got hurt. You can argue you didn't lose value on him if you drafted him at the 101. He maintained and gained value, and then boom, the floor fell out from under him. That could happen. That's the risk when you actually draft the player and you go, oh, I'll wait until he blows up a couple games. Until he goes out in week 1 and doesn't blow up. And then week 2 gets a high ankle sprain. All of a sudden you're going, okay, I can't cash out ever again at close to what I could have gotten on the clock in the rookie draft. However, what I think is going to happen, and this is my plan of somebody that doesn't have a lot of 101s, the ones that I have, I want to shop to try to get the deals like Shane was talking about. But are there situations where I have a 103 or a 104? Am I going to be able to move up for maybe an even cheaper price because the 101 has to make a process trade to move back? So are there going to be deals that you can buy Bijan for cheaper than you think? Or maybe you pay a little bit of a premium, but you know what? I'm guessing a lot of the teams that you are set up, like Shane mentioned, 3 top 15 receivers, 2 top 10 quarterbacks. Guess what? Those probably don't have the 101. Rare. I mean, find me one where it's like, wow, I'm so stacked and I also have the 101. I have one roster with a 101 where I already won the title or I finished in the top 2 and I have the 101. Like that's a luxury. That's 1 out of 50 leagues.
Okay, so you're watching this show on YouTube, so you can consume Dynasty content on YouTube. Are you subscribed yet? No? Hit the subscribe. Join us. We're fun.
But on those leagues, are you willing to pay up a little bit more and get your Bijan exposure there? Hey, this is already a first place team. I will pay the 103 and a 24 first to get him in that league. And that's going to be one of the 2 or 3 that I get him in, but at least I'm putting him on the teams that I know fit best instead of, well, I'm going to have no exposure to Bijan. I only have 101 and it's a terrible team, but I'm just going to take him anyway because I want to get him in one league. Like you're not doing yourself really any justice by playing it that way. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the trade market to where are there going to be some teams that are so desperate to get the 2-for-1 package that they end up settling for maybe a little bit less than what we're even talking about. Like maybe the market shifts.
24 first. Like
there's going to be people out there that get 105 and 111, and they're going to go, that's the best I could get. And everyone's going to make fun of them and go, oh my God, you should have gotten so much more. Like we're not in the league with that person and didn't offer them that. You know what I mean? They're going to say, oh, you should get more than that because Bijan's worth more than that. Well, yeah, but if that's what the market's dictating, my choice is either draft Bijan or take that package. And that's where you got to make the decision. So right then and there, though, I'll tell you right now, if someone's like, well, I'll give you the 105 and the 111 for Bijan, I'm going to tell them to shove it up their pie hole. I'm just going to say, no, I'm going to take the risk. We're going to add Bijan to my team. It's a bad team. Pie hole. Up it. Down it.
Cram it up your cram hole.
Cram it up your cram hole, Floyd.
I'm thinking, is that up a pie hole or down a pie hole? Which one is it?
All of them. You just ram it through the pie hole. Just send it through the pie hole. At that point, I'll just put him on my roster and go, you know what? Maybe, maybe he does have a Christian McCaffrey season in him. And those 30 points a game, that 20, basically plus 20 points a game he's going to give me compared to the player that I would have had in that slot is going to be enough to get me to mediocre. And if it is, then you know what? I got 24 picks. And I can use some of those 24 picks to fill in around Bijan. And guess what? Now you guys have poked the bear and you've made the bear angry. And now I'm going to just keep adding players to this roster.
Yeah, because we had talked about before how back in the Saquon days, you could get a package. Somebody was going to come to you with a giant package that could reboot your roster, is what you said, Scott. Those were your words. The dynasty landscape may not be there anymore. Get this massive haul, like 3-4 first equivalent for Bijan Robinson. So let's look at this roster right here. Should this person be drafting Bijan at 101? Right off the top, you see Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson as the two quarterbacks in a super flex. Najee Harris, Drake London, Travis Etienne's on that squad. It looks like it's a pretty decent starting roster from what we could tell. Was it a start 10? What are your thoughts here? Does this look like a Bijan team?
Yeah, I take Bijan here.
This is one of those where the first box is the quarterbacks, right? He's got 2 top 10 quarterbacks. You got Watson and Herbert. So that's checked. I know Shane says, yep, he'll do it. And Shane is a lot more, you know what? I've probably tried to move some running backs for receivers on this team and it's not working. So I'm just going to draft a running back and just keep hammering people with them. I don't care if I have Najee Harris and Travis Etienne and Bijan Robinson and a bunch of other running backs. Like, I'm probably too far ahead of the skis on running back already on this team. Like, I don't want to add Bijan to a team where I already have Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, because immediately we're going, well, hey, can I trade one of those guys for a receiver?
Right.
So you can just cut to the chase and say, can I trade Bijan for a receiver? And we already talked about what the price would be. Sure, Marvin Jones and Drake London are my 2 wide receiver starters. I have a couple others on my bench that are, wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 4s. Do I just add Bijan to that team and I just bank that over the summer I can find a deal where someone gives me a receiver for Najee Harris, someone gives me a receiver for Travis Etienne, someone gives me a receiver for Bijan Robinson or Bijan? I don't know. It's interesting you mentioned 2018 because we're nowhere close to that dynasty landscape anymore. People are smarter. There's more information out there. 9 out of 12 managers in your league are fading running backs. Or they like running backs. They like running backs at costs where it doesn't hurt them if they're wrong and the running back gets hurt or they expire. There's no risk. It's like, oh, I'll pay a random first for that guy. But a random first is for Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, a guy that can literally break the league. And yeah, if he fades away, okay, I gave up a late first. But like, that's the market on running backs. So when it comes to, well, hey, I'm giving you Bijan. He's Saquon Barkley, but I hit the refresh button. We went back in time 4 years and he's even better. Yeah, nobody's paying for that. So you got to almost adjust your expectations. It's a really fascinating point in the landscape because we have this generational player coming in at almost the worst time for his market value.
Right. All right. Well, then this is, look, you're duty bound sometimes to make other moves. You're duty bound to go, all right, well, I'm going to add Bijan Robinson to this roster. I'm going to go trade a 24 first for Jerry Jeudy or another wide receiver in that tier. What did he end up as the wide receiver 20 last year? Something like that. He ended up a lot wide, 2-0.
20.
I give up a 24 first and I had a wide receiver 2 to this. So no, I'm not starting Drake London and Marvin Jones because no, that is what we call not good.
Nice.
But adding Drake London and Jerry Jeudy, my wide receivers are at least functional. I have a tight end like Mike Gesicki. And then, yeah, I obviously have Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, and Bijan Robinson. If Najee Harris pops next year, there's the Pittsburgh fan in your league. There's at least one of them, even though there's only 12 owners. I don't know how every league has a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in your league, but they do, that thinks Najee is Franco Harris. And we like running backs. We do. We want running backs. That's why we like when Bijan Robinson is a no doubt about it 101. We weren't this excited about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and they were at least analytically as good as prospects as Bijan Robinson was. But we didn't all go like this. This is like chicks digging the long ball. We love running backs. We want to be forced to draft a running back. So if you really need to, you will be able to move someone like a Najee Harris if he pops off for 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, so you're trying to trade back from the 101. Would you give up the 101 for the 108, 109, and a 24 first?
Process-wise, it's not terrible. I know Shane has this fear that he's going to get scared in the middle of the night, and that 24 first is going to turn into the 112. I mean, he already mentioned it. He's going to get stuck with Will Levis, whatever receiver busts, and the 112 in 2024, and then he's going to kick himself for 3 years because he traded away Bijan.
As far as process, if I can get 3 firsts, okay.
It's the 3 first rule that we would basically kind of violate for Very few players, but when you get it, you really have to zoom in on where the picks are. And if they're, they're not the 111, 112, and the team that's gone undefeated 3 straight years, his 24 first.
Right.
Okay. Like there's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, 3 firsts.
Yeah. Hopefully, if that's what you're forced to do, you can take one of those late picks and just flip it for a 24 first and end up with 2 24 firsts.
You have to work your brain. And you got to get into math mode because we get a lot of questions. 10 teams start 9, 12 teams start 8, 12 teams start 9. These formats, immediately your brain has to go, the top asset goes up, the package of more than one asset goes down. Like you have to make that adjustment in your head. Just like if I told you 14 teams start 12. I'm probably, other than a elite quarterback, I'm not even considering hardly giving 2 firsts for a lot of players, right? Like you're not in those leagues, a 14 team start 12. You don't have interest in giving up your Drake London and Chris Olave to go get Jamar Chase. Like that. You have only one of those moves to make like every couple years. 10 teams start 9. It's like, dude, give me the 5 best players in the league. I'll stream the other 4 spots and I can still beat you. So you do have to do that math in your head. We get a lot of questions and it's like, okay, I'm getting 3 firsts. Like, dude, it's a 10 team start 8. The most you can start is 3 receivers. Like that's where you want to get 4 hammer running backs and just take your chances. How many people tanked for this pick? They didn't tank for the player itself. Right. Tanked for this, man, I can get 4 firsts because he's the next Saquon. So now what do? He's not the next Saquon. At least he's not from a market value perspective because there will never be another one. You knew you were tanking for that. Of course you wanted to tank for the best asset, but now how do you play it? And time's ticking. You have 4 months to figure it out. If you're stuck making that pick and you're like, wow, my team's dog shit. I don't want to take a running back. What do I do?
So if you have the 101 and you realize you shouldn't be taking Bijan, is your first step going to be, if it's a super flex, you're looking at your quarterbacks, let's say you only have one, are you trying to use that 101 first and foremost to address your QB? Whether it's trading back from 101 to draft a QB or buying one outright.
You should be going to the Joe Burrow guy. You should be going to the Justin Fields gal, to Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, literally all of them. Start with the 101. I know it's not enough and see if they respond. That's where you should be starting, is with everybody that has a top 8 quarterback, top 9 quarterback. I draw the line at like Kyler and Dak. That's probably a little bit too low for me.
Yep. It's probably Lawrence, Watson, Fields, Lamar Jackson, Burrow, Herbert, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen. Those are the 9. I'll send the 101 for all of those guys. A couple of them, obviously, you have to add a plus. But I think you're doing your due diligence to add those guys no matter what. Even if they counter and they go, okay, I'm not going to trade you Trevor Lawrence for the 101, but you got to give me 3 seconds and the 101. Okay. I would be willing to consider something like that unless it's a start 12 or start 13 where the seconds might come more into play. But that's it. I'm even in the situations where if I could do that and I already have 2 of those quarterbacks, it almost feels like I'd rather have the 3rd quarterback. Yep. I'd rather have Justin Fields as my QB3. Guess what? I now have a ton of flexibility to go to everybody else in my league and say, I have 3. You have none.
And then
I want Bijan plus. Well, you don't have Bijan. So what other leverage can I extract from you? No, for real. Like that. If you have the 101, you have one of the 4 or 5 non-quarterback assets that at least is not going to get you laughed away from the table when you send the offer. So take advantage of the time window.